Awesome. Good morning, everyone. It's so good to see your faces and your smiles. Happy New Year. I haven't seen you since early December. So it's good to see you all. Thank you for joining us today for the Delta Region Community Health Systems Development Program, Lumina Spark Discovering Self and Others Training. As you know, I'm Robin Nato, Senior Program Coordinator with the DRHCSD Community Care Coordination Team. The Delta Regional Authority and the Health Resources Services Administration's Federal Office of Rural Health Policy have partnered to support the Delta Region Community Health Systems Development Program. Through a cooperative agreement with the federal office, the center administers the program and manages the provision of services to selected hospitals and communities. Services are provided through technical assistance, which includes various assessments, on-site consultations, action planning, and coaching implementation of best practices and adoption of key transition strategies. The Center is committed to diversity, equity, and inclusion, and anti-racism, and building a culture where difference is valued. You can learn a little bit more about our commitment on our website. We are dedicated to fostering an environment that is both safe and brave. Here we strive to create a space where everyone feels respected and supported, while also being encouraged to engage deeply and take risks in our collective learning journey, excuse me. In this space, we are committed to respect and kindness, confidentiality and trust, courage and openness, support and understanding, and respectful challenge and accountability. Thank you for contributing to a space where we can all engage in meaningful, transformative learning where we feel safe and supported. And then just a couple housekeeping items. If you haven't done so already, connect your video feature and eventually connect your microphone because we want to hear from you in just a few moments. We also encourage the use of the phrase "I'm complete" to indicate when you are finished speaking. We also want you to ask any questions, participate in discussion. You can utilize the chat box if you're having technical difficulties, or you can unmute your line. Again, if you have any technical issues today, just reach out to me in the chat box and I will be happy to help. And now I will hand it over to Hugh Life.
All right, thank you, Robbie, and welcome, champions. I'm going to start sharing my screen here so we can get to our objectives and then agenda for the day. I wanted to make sure that you also understand our role. So today, Shade is your presenter to bring us back to Lumina journey, reflect on what we know so far about who we are as individuals and how we interact with each other as a team, given a Lumina Spark knowledge you already have. So it's a little bit of review, reflect, and activities. Lots of fun activities, hands-on experiences, being in breakout rooms a couple of times and really digging into some ways that we can continue to build on what we already know and apply in our work. So the objectives is to learn how to quickly discern the qualities of others. So you'll have an activity there to help you being able to a little bit more consciously identify different personality styles within your environment, groups that you're working with, gain understanding, appreciation, and confidence working with those different personalities, and have hopefully an intentional approach how you can engage with those individuals. Leverage this work more effectively with your community partners and your healthcare organizations. We also, from the experience perspective, would like you to gain appreciation and confidence in working with others and make sure that we understand and appreciate these different approaches in our work environments and personal life. So we're going to continue to go a little bit, an extra mile to bring our personal life into these conversations as well. So with that, since we're on this slide, Robbie, let's launch a poll right now to see where are we now with these objectives. And then at the end of the session, we'll launch a poll again and evaluate where we are at 12 p.m. Central Time. So you guys have a poll in front of you. Go ahead and vote or select. Look at the confidence already in the room. Love it. Shade, you have a work cut out for you. How do you go from confident to very confident? Super confident. As we're doing the poll and getting grounded, as soon as everybody takes it, Robbie, let me know. I'll just continue to.
You are good?
You are good. Everybody participated?
Yep.
All right, so let's take a look. Confident and somewhat confident, mostly. And some of us are not confident yet. So that's our goal. All of us, the whole team, let's lean in and help everybody to walk away confident today in understanding self, discerning the qualities in others, applying this tool and this knowledge into our daily life and work life. So agenda then, our 3 hours would look like this. We'll spend some time getting back in the space. So this is your opportunity in the next 20 minutes or so to get all the other work out of your mind and out of your desktop. So we can all focus on each other on this learning journey together. Be respectful of each other's time, which means if one of us is not engaging, it impacts the quality of experience for everybody else. So get that stuff out of your way if you can. We'll have a recap of Lumina Spark, very brief if you can see, only 10 minutes, and dive right into some of the activities to help you apply that knowledge. Again, 10 minutes introduction to how you might use Lumina in building rapport quickly within your teams, and then in communication activity for about 20 minutes. And then we'll take a quick break, come back and practice speed reading, recognizing different qualities in others and being able to adjust and adapt your communication style to them. And of course, the communication tool that we've been bragging about all this time is a conversation, right? So it's an opportunity for you to see how you can continue to strengthen your muscle in developing those conversations and facilitating with different groups as you're learning who they are and how they show up in your meetings or in your sessions or conversations. So speed reading activity will help you in 2 ways. Identify different personalities present in your groups, but also start thinking about how to tap into those personal differences when you're engaging in a session, meeting, or a conversation. And then we'll wrap up with our reflection debrief of today's work and the poll. And so hopefully we will be all confident at that point with knowledge and skill. Any questions? If you have any questions, let's do a little bit of check in on how we're using Zoom. I know you've been living in Zoom, but just in case to make sure, does everybody have all the tools available to you for engagement here? First of all is mic, and we're going to get off mic in a minute with our introductions. Chat, why don't we go ahead and put something in chat, something cheerful. It's New Year. Happy New Year, everyone. 2025. So put a message in chat, whatever comes to mind. It could be just as simple as thumbs up, a heart, or Happy New Year. Good to see you all. There we go. Thank you, guys. We know where to find that. You can adjust your screen if you didn't know that. If you don't know, let us know. We can help out. And of course, voice is always welcome. So at any time, if you have a question or you'd like to share your thoughts or ideas, raise your hand so we know you'd like to speak, unmute, and share your thoughts, share what's on your mind. Looks like everybody found chat, and now we're going to go ahead and test our mics. So we'll go ahead and start with introductions, reintroductions, because we already know each other really well. But one more time, if you could, please, your name, role and organization that you're representing, and one hope you have for 2025. So give you a second to think about it. Not your name or organization, but the hope for 2025. What's your hope for 2025? I will start, then I'll pass it on to Robbie. And Robbie, if you can, we'll use the pass the baton method this time around. So pay attention who didn't speak yet. And Robbie will pass it to somebody else. Once you're complete, you share your hope, pass it to somebody else on the team. And then we'll end with Shade, because Shade is going to take us on the journey of reviewing Lumina. All right, so my name is Irina Firstman. I am part of Hugh Life organization, and my role today is to be your producer. This is the most I'll be talking today. So I'm trying to say as much as I can in the first 10 minutes. And then I'll come back and help us debrief at the end. My hope for 2025, I actually did activity for myself using the conversation method in terms of what I would like to focus on. And my word has become life. I want to live more and work a little less. So that's my hope for 2025, more life experiences. And I'm going to pass it on to Robbie.
Thank you, Irina. Again, good morning, Robbie Nato, Senior Program Coordinator, and my role today is just to sit back and watch and make sure everything goes smoothly. And one hope I have for 2025 is to be healthier in both body, mind, and spirit. And I will pass it to Erica.
Great morning, everyone. I'm Erica Ledette, Program Specialist with this center. And a hope that I have for 2025 is to be very intentional with everything personal and work-wise, professional, just making sure that I am in tune with the things that are going on around me and try to have some type of work-life balance. And I will pass it to Helena.
My name is Helena Wolf, and I am the Public Relations Marketing and Physician Recruiter and Community Champion at Texas County Memorial Hospital in Houston, Missouri. And I guess I hope personally for me would to be able to go on a vacation this year with my family. And then professionally, just, we have a new CEO, just having a healing, productive year, and hope that our spring action planning session goes very well. So I am complete.
Great job with I'm complete. Helena, can you please pass it on to somebody too?
Sorry about that. I pass it to Grayson.
All right, good morning. My name is Grayson Collins. I am the project manager and business development admin for DeSoto Regional in Mansfield, Louisiana. And one hope that I have for 2025 is just to continue to improve as a person and as a professional. And I'm complete, and I'll pass it to Nikki.
Hi, Nikki Williams. My role is a community champion and a network program manager here at Aaron Hearing Community Health Center. My one hope for 2025 is to complete, to get my license in real estate. And I am complete, and I pass that on to, let's do Tara.
Hello, my name is Tara Hervey. I'm the Director of Social Services at Tallahatchie General Hospital and Extended Care. One hope for me for 2025 is, I really don't know, a healthy and prosperous year for me and my family, and for my son to graduate in May with all A's. I am complete. And I pass it on to Tabitha.
Good morning. I am the community champion for Delta Health System in Greenville, Mississippi. And one hope for me for 2025 is to become in alignment with God and myself, as well as to be enrolled in the LCSW program. That is to receive my clinical in social work. And I am complete. I pass it on to Helena. Now Helena already went. Leah.
I'm Leah Williams. I'm the community champion at Atmore Community Hospital. One hope that I have for 2025 is to be healthier and try to declutter my life. And I will pass it to Shade.
Good morning, y'all. Good to see everybody again. My name is Shade Deal, shade like a tree, deal like a pickle. And my role today is to be your Lumina SME and share some information with you and help lead you through the Lumina discussion. One hope that I have for 2025, the exact opposite of Dr. Irina, I want to be busier as my wife and I have started our own business. I'm looking forward to having more work and getting to travel with that work. So with that, we are going to move on to the next slide. If you remember when we met last year in the fall, we went through some of the Lumina Learning principles. And so you see these on your screen here. Down at the bottom, starting with self-knowledge, we spent our first session going through information about who you are, about your results, and how you can learn more about yourself. And so you see there, conscious of our natural preferences, behaviors, reactions under pressure, aware of your Lumina Spark 4 colors, 8 aspects, 24 qualities, and noticing what triggers overextended behavior. Today, we're going to jump into valuing diversity in alignment with your objectives, noticing other people's different ways of being, listening to and validating different perspectives, starting to see the value in people who think like you, and developing a better understanding of the value in those people who think different than you do. This will include building rapport. We're going to spend some time learning about how to tune up or down our own behaviors, when we should tune up and down our behaviors to build rapport, reading the context and adapting our behaviors to make sure that my strengths, my preferences are not creating barriers for other people. And so you started this journey with Spark, with the assessment and the debrief. And we know that self-knowledge is super important to this, and we're going to work our way up to the pinnacle of success, co-creating results there as we're going through this with your team. You can see that this is all included in your portrait. So your 4 colors, 8 aspects, 24 qualities, they're going to be a part of your portrait. And if you want to spend some time diving into that individually, then we can talk about how we can make that happen. And so from this, we're going to use this opportunity to use Lumina to help us build rapport and work through some purposeful collaboration. So we move into the next slide. If you have researched the theory behind personality assessments, then you know, and we discussed this when we were all together in Arkansas, looking at the Jungian model, the Big Five model. Lumina is built around some of the same research. And so Lumina particularly covers 4 of the Big Five personality traits: openness, conscientiousness, extroversion, and agreeableness. The 5th is a part of the Lumina emotion product. But here you see for the assessment that you've been a part of, this includes empirical data-driven, independent research, 5 main factors that come from the ocean model. And we know these factors are universal and that they have biological origins. And so if you look at any personality assessment, they tend to narrow things down to a top 4. Lumina is in agreement with that. And we're talking today about the biological origin, just the way that your brain works. We're not going to tell you that there's a right or a wrong way as we're working through the Lumina archetypes. They all have value. But we do want to help you grow in your awareness as we're learning to appreciate people who are different than us and really understanding the value that others bring. So moving into the next slide, we see the 4 archetypes: empowering others, being inspiring, inspiration-driven, the commanding red archetype, and blue conscientiousness. These 4 archetypes are in all of us. When we look at the way we think, the way our brains work, how we're raised, the relationships we build, the people in our lives that have influence on us, you will see in your results that you get a score for all 4 of these. Lumina does not say that you are only one. Lumina agrees that we all have the ability, and we use all 4 of these thinking types, these archetypes, in our personality. However, over time, based on our role, based on the people that we spend time with, our friends, our parents, and the way our own brain works, we tend to become more comfortable in 1 or 2 of these personality types. And those become a part of our strengths, a part of our identity. And so if you want to see your graph here that shows how you score on these 4 in your portrait, it's on page 9. And then you can also see a little bit more information about that in the 3 different personas on page 26. So we all have varying degrees of how we score in these 4 personality types. None of us are just one thing. We're all 4. And now it's a matter of understanding, what do I use the most? When can my strengths become a weakness or a hindrance to other people? What aspects of my personality am I not using to its fullest extent to be as successful as possible? And how can I grow that? So from the 4 archetypes, Lumina then moves into the 8 aspects, taking the information a little bit deeper and understanding how with these archetypes, you see on the mandala here, people focused in the green, big picture thinking over in the orangish yellow color. And at the top of the mandala, they combine in that inspiration driven. And this is how you see people who have very similar scores. I score really high in yellow and red. So that means that when we look at the 8 aspects, that sort of combination of yellow and red will show up as extroversion. So inspiration driven at the top of the stop sign figure, big picture thinking as we move our way around, extroverted, outcome focused, discipline driven, down to earth, introversion, and people focused. So 4 aspects, the 4 archetypes become 8 aspects in order to help us develop an understanding of how these things show up for us. We can go a little deeper and move into the 24 qualities from the 8 aspects. And so you see on the mandala on your screen now, each of these 8 aspects have 3 primary qualities that combine to create these. Now, Lumina is very complex. We look at 24 qualities, 8 aspects, 4 archetypes, and then we add on top of that the fact that you're looking at 3 personas for each. So how do you score in each quality, in each aspect, in each archetype at home? How is your score different at work? And how does that change when you're under stress? This means that your Lumina results can be very complex, which is a good thing because you are very complex. Lumina is not used to put you in a box to create labels. It's just used to help us understand the complexity of who we are and people around us. So very complex results, and we're going to focus on the 8 aspects today just to help us keep this a little easier to understand. If you look in your portrait, you can see your score for the 8 aspects on page 10. On page 10, they're in word form. You have a word cloud. The larger the word, the more of that, the higher you scored yourself in that aspect. You can also see your 8 aspects like you see here on the screen on page 11 of your portrait with your color splash. So if you like the words and you think that way, use page 10. If you like the more artsy-fartsy view of the mandala and the splash, then you can use page 11. On the mandala, the longer the arm is and the wider the arm, the more of that aspect you scored yourself in, the higher you gave yourself that score. So we're going to look today at the 8 aspects as we work our way through this process and understanding ourselves and developing our understanding of other people. The next slide we have here. As we look at the aspects, you will notice that sometimes people score high in opposite ends of the spectrum. So on the screen here, you see the 8 aspects, 4 on one side, 4 on the other. And what you're seeing here side by side are opposite ends of the spectrum. People focused is the opposite end of the personality spectrum from outcome focused. It is possible to score high in both ends of the spectrum. Lumina says anything above 60% is considered high. And so if you're looking at your results that give you a little deeper view of this, you may want to look at page 28 to see in the 8 aspects, how do you score yourself for these qualities and in each of the personas. So paradoxes matter because they can represent one of 2 things. A paradox can be a really great balance in your personality as you've developed some experience, your education, your wisdom in learning how to work with people. You've learned how to balance opposite ends of the spectrum. When do I tune up one end? When do I tune it down? Paradoxes can also represent somewhat of an internal struggle where this is how I want to be when I know I should be the other way. And there's this internal struggle in trying to figure out the best way to show up. Or a paradox can represent the internal struggle being a sudden flip in your personality. I tend to score higher in the green in my everyday persona. When I'm natural and comfortable, I show up and I'm people focused. But as soon as I become stressed, I flip really quickly to the outcome focused. And that sudden flip in my personality from being people focused to being outcome focused can create barriers for how other people approach me. So we want to make you aware that when you're scoring high in opposite ends of the spectrum, how does that show up for you? Is it a sign of balance, or is it a sign of that internal struggle? So as we get ready to move into this today, you're going to have some paradoxes in your personality. And we want you to think about, which of the 8 aspects have you used the most? Which of these are you comfortable with? We're going to move into some partner reflection here. Which of the 8 aspects do you find the most difficult to tap into? I know in my scores, the down to earth aspect is where I scored the lowest. And so I have to be really aware of not shutting others down, of not allowing my bias to get in the way when I'm working with people who score high there, but purposefully seeking the value in them bringing balance when I score so high in the big picture thinking. Which of the 8 aspects have you relied on the strengths of someone else? So I score low in blue. There are times when I have to say, I need somebody who can think this way to help me out. So we're going to put you in some breakout groups, and we want you to think about some of these questions as you're working your way through your chat. Which of the 8 aspects have you used the most? Which of the 8 aspects do you find the most difficult to tap into? And which of the 8 aspects have you relied on from somebody else's strengths to help you?
I was muted here. Does everybody have has a portrait? Just curious if you need a minute to find it, pull it up. Okay, sounds like everybody has it. I'm gonna go ahead and just post these same questions in the chat just so you have them in front of you before you go into breakout rooms. And we'll spend about 15 to 18 minutes in pairs. So let's see, here are the questions. So you can see those. And then Erica and Robbie, you're gonna stay with us. All right, so we'll have a minute to transition into your breakout room. Think about these questions. 15 minutes means about 5 minutes per question. So see if you can also keep an eye on time. See you in about 15, 16 minutes.
Welcome back. Do we have everybody back in the big room with us? Perfect. So we'd love to hear some information from each of the groups. I'm going to ask at least one person from each of the breakout rooms to share what's something that you learned about a different aspect or personality type that maybe surprised you. What's something you learned in your breakout room about others that surprised you? Let's see who's brave enough to go first.
Tara thinks she's introverted, but she really isn't. She keeps wanting us to buy that.
I am.
Yes, that's one of the things that, as you all were in the breakout group, Robbie and I were discussing that, with introversion, my wife is also on the introverted side of the spectrum. And Robbie said the same sort of thing, that when she's with people she's very comfortable with, and with people she's taken the time to build a relationship with, then she's, much more likely to engage. So if you know somebody really well and they're comfortable with you, it can be really hard to pinpoint that introversion, but it really shows up in new spaces, meeting new people, where they tend to sit back and let others lead as they're trying to learn about and build those relationships. So my wife is that way. When it's our family, she never stops talking. But when we're with people we don't know, she expects me to do all of the talking. And, if we go to Walmart, she wants me to sit in the truck because I know everyone and she doesn't want to have to talk to everyone. So that's that.
Yeah, that's what Tara was saying, because all of our champions, we know each other so well by this point that she's very comfortable with us. So
Right.
She's not with us.
Yes. And so it's a testament to Tara's effort to get to know the group, and a testament to the rest of the group to making her very comfortable. You've done some really powerful work when your introverts are willing to open up and engage.
They have done some powerful work. They get me engaged in public speaking, so they have done wonders.
That's good to hear. Good to hear. What about another group? What's something surprising that you learned or something that stood out to you while you were having your discussion in your breakout?
I'll go. So in our breakout session, it was myself and Helenia. What we both realized is that we are so people focused. We're both people focused. And some of the same issues that I struggle with, she struggled with as well. For instance, it's kind of hard for us to say no. And we tend to take on like so many tasks. You know, we're always yes and yes and yesing to the point that we get overwhelmed. And so we've kind of focus so much on people that we forget to pour into our own cups.
Right.
And then another thing is with being people focused, I've come into contact with one other individual who's very outcome focused, which is like you said, your wife has like total opposite. Well, it's my boyfriend because I'm people focused. And that's one thing that we kind of like butt heads about because he's so goal driven. He's really tough. He's really competitive. He's like, you got to set these goals, you got to go. And then I'm on the other hand is like a social media butterfly. I've always been an outgoing person. And he was like, you care too much about what people, think of you. And it's like, no, because that's who I am. And so we have a hard time, I guess, creating a balance, because it's kind of needed, especially if you want to see like different outcomes regarding anything in your life, career, etc. So that was very surprising.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for sharing that. You brought up for the people who score really high in green, that tendency to overcommit because they don't like to tell people no. And it's one of the things that we spend a lot of time helping leaders and teams develop some norms around not depending too much on your greens, not depending so much on those people who score high in green, who have a hard time saying no, and allowing themselves to overcommit. What can the team do to say, all right, Nikki, we're asking for help, but when we look at our checklist here, Nikki's already doing 10 things and everybody else in the group is only doing 2. So thank you so much for volunteering, but we're not going to let you overcommit. We know you love us. Let's see if somebody else can share the workload so that the team can take ownership and helping maintain that balance there. And it's something that's really important for leaders to understand about their teams, is not allowing people who score so high in green to overcommit, and helping build into their own thought process that ability to say no and maintain balance, self-care for themselves. It's really important.
Thank you for sharing that.
All right. What about the last group? What's something surprising that stood out to you as you were having your discussion with your partner?
I was with Grayson. But the ironic thing is that we was doing the people focus, and we are both introverts. I know that's hard to believe, some of you guys. See? But like Grayson was sharing with me is that he don't have to be around a group of people as well as to speak. He only speak if he have to. And with me, I'm about the same, is that I can go into my shell like a turtle and don't have to pretty much be around anyone. But when I have to, then I do. And also we talked about how being a part of Lumina Sparks, as well as this being a community champion, that we have blossomed in that area of being more extrovert than introvert. So we want to take our hats off to you guys.
Yes, ma'am. And that is very true for those people who score high in the blue, is understanding and learning the prep work that they have to invest when it comes time to be in front of the group. Just because you're an introvert doesn't mean you necessarily have stage fright or a fear of public speaking. It may just mean that you've got to do a lot of prep to be able to show up. And we see that when we're talking about people who are on stage, who are leading discussions, who are doing some public speaking, people who score high in blue have an extra leg up because of their willingness to do the prep work. Whereas somebody like me who scores so high in yellow, I would have to really focus and narrow my message, be very careful about saying too many words and chasing rabbits. And so it can be a really great strength for public speaking and for leading the group, that you score high in that introversion into the spectrum, because it encourage you and it's natural for you to do the prep for that. It's a really great thing to have on that end of the spectrum.
I was going to share.
So go ahead.
With Tabitha and Grayson, I was sharing when you all were in your breakouts. When you came back and just shared just now, it reminded me of my son, and he's 14, and he is a extrovert in that moment. And when that moment is over, you would have never known that that situation even took place. Like 6th grade, he goes to his first dance, he gets in the car, we're riding home. He was like, oh, it was okay. And I would have taken his word, but the school posted a picture of him dancing in the middle of the circle. Would have never known that he even danced at all. And so it reminded me of you all sharing that. And I can see it, like you're extroverted in that moment. And then after that, you're back in your shell. You don't want to be bothered. And that event never even took place. So I can actually relate to that.
Yes, ma'am. When we were sharing there too, they're adding new information. As you know, our study about our brains, our personality is constantly growing. And so one of the new things that has recently come out is this idea of ambiverts. And ambiverts are people who are extroverted with the right people at the right time. And they know when to tune that up. And it can be a really great skill to have, to know how to save my energy, how to use it in the right moment. And so you may see that show up in your results as a potential paradox. If you're scoring high in certain of the blue qualities on one end of the spectrum, and you're also scoring high in some of the orange qualities on the other end of the spectrum, you can see that paradox show up. So really great information that we are seeing here. I was telling Robbie and Dr. Irina and Erica too, I'm one of those people that when it comes time to sit at my desk, to sit with my computer and be really focused on detail specific tasks, I have to mentally prepare for that. I have to be prepared to have the right time, the right frame of mind to sit and be focused. My wife is the opposite. She's comfortable with the very detail-oriented task. But when it comes time to be a part of a group, to go to a big church outing or have all of our family at our house, she has to have the time to mentally prepare for that. And so you can see opposite ends of the spectrum there, where extroverts need to prepare for quiet time and introverts need to prepare for that crowd time. All right. Any other insights that jump out to you as you're learning about each other? I would like to hear from at least one person. We have 3 minutes before we jump into building rapport. And say the last question there was, which of the 8 aspects have you relied on the strength of someone else? So get at least one person in the group to share, I've realized that this aspect is something I don't do well, but I have this person at work or this person in my personal life who really helps bring that out. Which of the 8 aspects do you rely on the strength of someone else?
For me at work, sometimes when it comes to more detail-oriented things, I kind of lean on my COO for that. Depending on what it is, I can be very detail-oriented, but more often than not, I'm more of a big picture thinker. Me and Tabitha talked about that when we were in our breakout room, but that's usually what I tend to. And my splash actually got it flip-flopped. It said that I was very detail-oriented. I'm like, well, not always. It depends. But
right. All right. Thank you so much for sharing that. I agree with you there. When I was working in corporate and had an office job, I had a partner trainer with me his name was James, and he scored his splash was almost the opposite of mine. Like together we made one complete person, and we were a really, really great team. We hardly ever had any difficulties or struggles or problems in our relationship, and we learned so quickly how to balance that, and it made for a really, really great dynamic duo when we were doing our work together, and something that we can learn to look for as we are building relationships and trying to be more effective in the workplace. Our brain has a tendency to view those people whose personalities are different than ours, whose brain functions different than ours, to view that as personal offense. And I've learned in my own experience to say, okay, if this person is upsetting me, or if I feel like I'm offended, is it really offense? Or do I need to be more aware that they probably have a different brain function, a different personality than I do? And how can I bridge the gap to see the great way to partner? The best teams will always represent balance, taking those opposite ends of the spectrum and working together. We tend to seek that out in our personal relationships, just like I'm married to an introvert, but we don't always take the time to capitalize on that in our professional relationships. So really great things we can look for there. Thank you all so much for sharing that. I really appreciate that your breakout room was so meaningful for you. And so we want to add to that meaningful conversation here as we move into building rapport. Building rapport, that was one of the steps in the ladder there, learning when to tune up or down our own behaviors, reading the context and adapting our behaviors. This is all about understanding what do I do that works well? And is there anything that's a part of my strengths that I may need to tune down so I'm not hindering somebody else in the room? So building rapport. We went over this last time, so we're going to do a quick review here. As we move into the next slide, tips to build rapport. It's really important to understand the underlying need of these different color types, the archetypes. And so I had a leader in my former job who scored primarily blue, where I scored primarily yellow. And I had to be really aware of the underlying need so that I could see the positive side of that instead of allowing my bias to step in and create that offense. So what I'm going to ask, if somebody who scores high in blue wouldn't mind reading, what are the underlying needs that you see here in these bullet points? Read those off for us, and then let us know, do you agree with these?
Written evidence, proof, data, and numbers. I would definitely agree with all three of those. If you can give me those three things, then I'm on board.
All right, good to hear. And so something for the rest of us to know as we are learning how to build rapport. If I'm working with somebody who scores high in the blue like Grayson does, and I want their support, I want their buy-in, these are some things that I can give them to help get that buy-in. We know that any good idea, any solution hits on all of these positive aspects. It's just a matter of taking the time to say, okay, I can provide the written evidence, the proof, the data, the numbers. Let's go now to the opposite. Anybody out there that scores high in yellow, read these yellow bullets and let us know, do you agree with, disagree with any of these? Do we have any yellows, or am I the only one? Right. It's not uncommon. We do see in Lumina results that people who score high in yellow are the smallest group of people. And there are a lot of different ideas and theories as to why. But I'll go ahead and read these off for you. Yellow, underlying needs to be creatively engaged, to picture the future, to see your positivity. Very, very important for me. If you want me to join your team, if you want me not to chase rabbits or be distracted or be sitting there on my phone, you've got to let me engage with some creativity, share my ideas, talk out loud. You've got to let me think about the future, not just the moment and the specific details. And I need to see some personality. I need to see that there's something that you care about. It doesn't have to be the same thing as me, but some form of passion I need to see in order to engage with you. And so taking these opposite ends of the spectrum from the blue and the yellow and balancing those out, learning how to put those things together. If you're working with community partners that score high in the yellow, you may feel like it's so hard to have a conversation with them. They keep changing the subject. They talk about all this ridiculous stuff. It should take 5 minutes and I'm there for 15 minutes because they tell me 27 stories. How can you use that aspect of their brain function to help lead the discussion in the way that you want to go? All right, let's go to the green. Somebody who scores high in green. Read those bullets. Do you agree or disagree?
I got it. It's to understand why, to be heard and valued, and to see others are cared for. And yes, I do agree with those.
All right, good to hear from the people who score high in green. That why really, really matters. What's the reasoning behind this? Don't just tell me because, don't tell me that it's all about the business. Let's connect it to the people. And any good idea, any great project, any solution that we have should help people. So it's a great way to get Greens to buy in and join us in our calls, to be valued and to be heard. Sometimes people who score high in the green end of the spectrum, they know that you can't fix things. They know that you're not going to be able to change it and just solve all of their problems, but they still need to be able to share their struggles. And the people on the other end, your yellows and your reds, they think if you tell me something, then I have to fix it right away. The greens understand. I may be telling you about my struggles, not because I expect you to fix it, just because I need you to understand and hear me. And it's something we can learn in developing those relationships to see the care for others. If people who score high in green do not see the care, it's going to be really hard to get their buy-in. And finally, let's go to the reds. 3 bullets. Can somebody read that off? Do you agree or disagree?
I'll read it. What's in it for me? The bottom line, and to see your confidence. And I will say I agree. I'm the type of person that when I start a project, I need to know what the end result is going to be, what we're looking for, what the objectives are. I need to know how to get there.
Right. And that's so important to have that perspective, especially if we're sitting down and we're having a meeting. Without somebody who scores high in red, the conversation can just continue forever. But we need those people who say, we're here for a specific purpose. Let's, remember our time frame and be respectful of that. So creating that balance, creating the accountability. People who score high in red are really good at accountability. They're comfortable having those difficult conversations, being the contrarian and saying, this isn't going to work, or you aren't pulling your weight. How can we help you do that? And that's an absolutely necessary part of effective teamwork and effective leadership. People who score high in red, according to Lumina, tend to be the most likely to be promoted within business because of their willingness to engage in those difficult conversations. So the underlying need is really important. It can help all of us change our perspective and how these people show up instead of allowing our bias to show up and create some hindrances in the relationship. If we move on to the next slide for building rapport, we're looking at some things that we see here for building rapport and giving them some tips to help engage. So if we're going through the blue here, for blues, give them time to think and send a follow-up in writing. That follow-up really matters. They will appreciate the follow-up in writing just to make sure they don't miss any details. Provide agendas and reading ahead of the meeting. We talked about this when we were together in Arkansas. If you want them to show up and engage in the conversation, give them the information beforehand so they can process, and then they will show up and be willing to engage. Ask probing questions and drill into their concerns. People who score really high in the blue, they have a tendency to provide yes, no answers, very short answers, not because they don't care or they're uninterested, but because they want to take the time to be really thoughtful with their words. So ask questions that are open-ended. Don't ask a yes or no question. Ask them something that requires them to engage and share more. For building rapport with people who score high in green, expect slower, more thoughtful energy. Remember, they're opposite of the reds. Reds want to move at top speed. Greens want to go slow and make sure everybody's included, everybody's heard, and that we're making the most thoughtful decision. Ask questions that show you care about them, the work at hand, or others. They want to know. Like, I understand this is a struggle for you, or hey, how is this going to affect our team? How is this going to affect the community that we're working with? The hard sell does not work for them. You saw that in the last slide for the reds. Hard sell is a great thing for the red end of the spectrum, but for the green, the hard sell does not work. It's more focused on people and taking care of people. Then we move into the next slide for the yellows and the reds. For those yellows, keep your discussion lively and entertaining. If you want me to remember something that has to do with data, that has to do with that boring stuff, there's my bias showing up, you better tell me a joke in the process. You better tell me a story. I have to have something to make me remember the data you're sharing. And even if you want to put up, a comic on the screen, if you want to make your graph look like mountains, make that up and down and the arrow moving up your graph, make it look like mountains. That picture will set in my mind to help me remember your data. Get them talking and ask open-ended questions. Be very careful about allowing them to take over the conversation and chase rabbits. You want your questions to guide them where you want them to go. Let them know you appreciate them and recognize. Yellows love to be loved. We're geniuses. We're amazing. Tell us all the time. And then finally, we have the red end of the spectrum. Get to the point quickly. If this is a 10-minute meeting, they'll give you 5. Ask them to summarize what they like and don't like about your idea. And when they summarize in person or in writing, you can expect short, succinct answers. They're going to give you, here's the 3 bullet points of what I think. I'm not going to give you the soap opera of my ideas, but you're going to get a short, to the point answer. And for those people who score high in red, direct and quick matters. The truth might hurt, but it's the only way to make progress. So expect them to tell you the truth, even if it stings a little, not because they don't care. They tell the truth because they do care. They're not going to allow us to fail because we're ignoring the truth. So we move into the next slide here for building rapport. We start to see, we're going to put you in another breakout for a few minutes. And we want you to think about your A game versus your B game. As an individual with the person that you're in your breakout room with, let them know you're going to get the best of me when you give me these 3 or 4 things. If you want me to show up, if you want me to buy in, if you want me to join and support your cause and help lead the charge, this is what you need in order to help me do that. You're not going to get the best of me. What are some things that might get in the way of your willingness to buy in and engage and lead the charge? So insights that are going to emerge, what others are noticing, and what you're going to do with this information, then we want you to be able to bring that back as we share. What's it take to get the best out of you? What gets in the way of you showing up and being your best?
Do you want to do a quick takeaway before the break from everybody else?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Thank you so much for that reminder. So you just spent some time in your breakout rooms with each other and talking about some things that you need in order to show up and bring your A game. And one of the questions that we had on there is, what is your takeaway going to be from this? Now, I would like to ask you to think about it in a different way. We ask you to list some things you need to show up with your A game. If there are things that you need, then there's also going to be things that other people need. So I'm going to ask you at least 1 or 2 to share. As you're thinking about other people that you're trying to build a relationship with, maybe there's a community partner, it's like, we just don't vibe for whatever reason. We haven't been able to make a connection. All of our meetings feel awkward or tense. What's something that you can do to help them show up on their A game? What aspects can you maybe tune up or down in your personality to help them show up with their A game? I need to do this better to make them feel more comfortable with me.
I think I just said it's just to observe other people in their spectrums, whatever, it is that makes them thrive, I guess, or and then just to be able to adapt to those to make a meaningful conversations and productive outcomes. But what I was saying is hard. It's like they haven't taken the Lumina spark, how that is to be able to know, exactly what makes them tick, I guess, how you can interact with them in a productive way.
Right.
So.
Yes, ma'am. And you're so accurate there. Awareness is the first step. We have a tendency to show up and we've got our speech ready. We prep for this. We have our paperwork ready. We know how we want the meeting to go. And in our mind, we've mapped all of this out. And sometimes we're so dedicated to our message that we forget to pay attention to the room and to read the room and really start to draw information based on how we need to change our approach. And so awareness is a really important first step. Learning how to present what you need and be who you are while also paying attention to the rest of the room. Really important step there. Anybody else on something that you feel like you can do, specifically maybe make a change in your approach and your personality and what to tune up or down to help somebody else show up on their A game? Get one more.
Well, with me, I need to slow down a little bit simply because I like my agenda and I don't want to take 30 minutes down a rabbit trail because I know everybody else is that way, but I need to loosen up a little bit and give them at least 10 minutes down that rabbit trail instead of the 30 that they're going to want to take. So that's one of the things that I think I need to work on my end.
Right. And that can be a really good cue to the rest of the room. I am that rabbit chaser. And I've learned when working with other people who are the same to kind of use myself as the example or give myself the blame and say, hey, I have an agenda here. And in the way that my brain works, I can get off track. So I'm going to do my best to stick to the time frames that I have listed for myself. So if I ask you, to come back to the agenda, just know it's so that I can stay focused. And it's kind of a way to hold them accountable without necessarily calling people out and saying, this is about you and you're totally off topic. Hey, I need to refocus here. What part of the agenda are we on? And it can help make that a little bit of an easier transition instead of necessarily calling people out when my green takes over and I don't want my red to be too abrupt. So thank you for sharing that, Leah. I appreciate that. So as we move into this next step, Helena actually just mentioned, how do we learn how to tune up or down? How do we know the best approach? And so speed reading is going to be a really great tool that Lumina introduces based on our knowledge of the different aspects, 4 colors, the 24 qualities, based on what we know about ourselves. How can we start to notice very specific things in other people? Now, Lumina calls that speed reading. Another word for it could just be our judginess. So we know how our brain works. We're doing this constantly. According to the Harvard Business Review, how long does it take for humans to categorize others? Like to get at least 3 responses. Just throw out, which one do you think it is? 10 minutes, 15 seconds, 150 milliseconds, 40 minutes. Which one of those do you think is the right answer? How long does it take us?
Probably the 150 milliseconds.
All right. Anybody else?
I say 15.
15 seconds. All right.
15 seconds.
All right. So I see your answers, and I think that probably has something to do with our personality. I'm yellow, and my brain goes 1,000 miles an hour, warp speed, no matter what. So like Helena, I thought the 150 milliseconds, but I can see where people who are a little more thoughtful in their approach would think the 15 seconds. The answer is 150 milliseconds. As soon as we see people, our brain starts interpreting the data that we're seeing. Humans categorize others in less than 150 milliseconds. Within 30 minutes, we've made lasting judgment about somebody's character. And there's biological reasons for this. It's just a part of the way our brains work in order to identify safety. Our brain is constantly looking for cues that let us know we're not safe. I was watching a video the other day, and it talked about how this study was done with women who live in large cities, and it asked them, just based on your feelings alone, where do you not feel safe walking up and down the streets of this city? And when they overlaid the map of where these women do not feel safe with the statistics for the highest crime rate, they aligned perfectly. So we know we have this kind of natural built-in discernment about how we are trying to assess the world around us. And within 30 minutes, that lasting judgment, it shows up. First impressions are so important. And we have to realize I need to be really very aware of my first impression and the vibe I'm putting out there for other people. And I need to be aware of my bias and my ability to judge a little too quickly and how I create those lasting judgments that could be off. So we're going to look at speed reading and what exactly it means in order to help you learn how to tune up and down to build that rapport with people who maybe you first met. You're coming in contact with a lot of people who've never taken the Lumina assessment before. So it can't be like, hey, Tabitha, what color are you on the Lumina spectrum? You may not be able to ask people that. So what are some things you can use to help you speed read? First of all, we want to look at body language. Body language matters when we're talking about how our internal mind and our internal workings show up on the outside. Your emotional, spiritual, mental, physical self is one being. And so there's going to be connection from your personality in the way that you present and your body language. Looking at surroundings and work environment. How is their desk set up? What direction do they face? What do they have set out on their desk that can tell me a little bit about their personality so I know the best approach to take? Listening to their choice of words and tone of voice. How do they speak? What sort of words are they using? Where's their inflection? Do they let me speak first, or do they want to speak first? And then noticing how they shake hands and greet people. In those first impressions, are they tactile? Do they want touch, or do they not want to be touched? These are things that we can use to help us speed read somebody. And it's never going to be 100% foolproof, but it at least gives us a baseline to say, based on these 3 or 4 things that I've noticed in these 5 seconds of walking up to this person, I'm going to assume that they're probably in the blue end of the spectrum. So this is how I need to approach this conversation. I'm going to give them some more details. I'm going to provide them with a written proof. I'm going to give them time to think when I ask them questions instead of, filling in the answer for them. So as we work our way through this process, we go on to our next slide here. You can see for the 4 colors, some things that help us with speed reading. So what I'm going to ask you to do this time, last time I asked you to read the color that represented where you fall on the spectrum. This time I'm going to ask you to read the color of the aspect or the archetype, that you score low in. So example, I would have to read the blue one because blue is my lowest score. Can somebody who scores low in blue read ways that can help you identify people who score high in blue? Everybody here scores high in blue? All right, I'll take this one because it's my lowest score. People who score high in blue tend to be very organized. They are, Lumina says, the most organized. They're much more observing. They're not going to speak up first. They don't necessarily want the attention in the room. They're comfortable sitting back and letting things happen and watching the dynamic of the room. They're very reliable. If they tell you they can do something, they mean it. And they're honest enough to tell you when they can't help you. They're really good at setting those personal boundaries and saying, you know what, I can't show up and give you my best, so I can't commit to that. They're more objective. They agree in the red end of the spectrum with seeing things from that objective, emotion-free lens, and they're evidence-based. If you don't give them the evidence, they will seek it out. These are the people who are Googling stuff under the desk on their phone while you're talking to make sure you know what you're talking about, because they need to see the evidence to really believe you. So things we notice about people who score high in blue. Here's some things to note. Now, if you do not score high in yellow, can you read what you see here on the slide for the yellow end?
Sociable, spontaneous, imaginative, cheerful, and demonstrative.
All right. So things we notice that for people who score high in yellow, you walk into a room, you're there to meet somebody, but on their way to shake hands with you, they speak to 3 other people in the room. Very sociable. Spontaneous. They might walk up to you and say, hey, I booked this room down the hall, but you know what? Let's run down the street and get a coffee instead and just talk while we walk. Just instantly willing to change the plans and go with the flow. Imaginative. They're the types that want to tell you a story about something that's going on in their life or hear a story from you. Very cheerful. And demonstrative, meaning they speak with their whole body. I don't know if y'all can tell yet right now, but I'm not sitting down because I need my whole body to move. And so I've been standing up this whole time because being demonstrative and my whole body being a part of the communication is really important to me. So these people use big hand gestures. They use big face gestures to show you what they're feeling. Very easy way to help identify people that might score high in yellow. Now let's move on to green. Somebody who maybe doesn't score as high in green. Can you read what's there for noticing, speed reading the green colors?
I scored high in green, but nobody wants to talk, so I'll read it if you'd like.
Go ahead.
Intimate, collaborative, evolving, empowering, and calming.
All right. So these people who score high in green, some things to notice about them. When they're having a conversation with you, they're going to be zoned in on you. They're going to make that important eye contact. They're going to make you feel like you're the only person in the room, and they're really listening to you, even if you're in a crowd. Collaborative. These are the individuals who love to be a part of a team. So when you start talking about ideas, they're going to start automatically bringing other people into the conversation. Oh, that's really great. You know, I know this person who can help with that. Oh, that's a great idea. so-and-so down the hall. They're really good at that. Evolving. They're willing to change their approach and change their attitude in order to match where you're going. They're not stuck in just their own ideas, but they're willing to evolve to fit the need. Empowering. They don't necessarily want all the accolades. They don't want all the attention. They are on the introverted side of the spectrum, but they want the team to do that together. And they're really, really good about telling you the great qualities that you bring to the table. They're really good about pointing out your strengths, and very calming. They tend to have a softer tone. They're people focused, and they're experience focused at the top of the spectrum, like yellows. But where people like me are a little too loud and too outgoing, your greens are going to want to have that important experience, but do it in a more calm way. And then finally, we have the red. Last one. Can we get somebody really quickly to read what you see there for red, to notice speed reading red?
I can do that because I am not a lot of red.
Go
Purposeful,
ahead.
direct, bold, competitive, takes charge.
Yes, people who are red, who score high in red, when you come in contact with them, they're going to want to get right to the point. They may not make time for small talk. You might ask them about their family or their weekend. They'll answer you really quickly, and they won't ask you about your family or your weekend because they want to get to the point. They're very direct. This is exactly what I think. This is why. They don't necessarily take the time to say it in the nicest way, with as much care as people on the opposite end of the spectrum, the green. And in their mind, they're doing that, being that direct, out of care. They're bold. They're willing to take charge. Hey, it's time to start this meeting. We're 2 minutes late. Can we get this going? They're competitive. They want to be the best, and they want their team to be the best. And they'll call you out if you're not helping be the best. And they're willing to take charge. And this includes that take charge. They're willing to take charge and take responsibility for the wins, but they're also willing to take charge and take responsibility for the failures. Hey, I did that. That was my idea. And I'm glad y'all think it worked because that was all me, if you remember. Or, hey, that was my idea. I'm sorry that was terrible and it sucked, but we learned from that, and I'll take the responsibility for that. So things that we can start to notice about people who score high in red. Now we move on to the next slide. There's some other aspects of this. We talked about the tone and linguistic style. People who score high in blue tend to be very steady with their delivery. When Robbie talks, she's very calm. It's very easy to listen to her because of that blue. Very steady with her delivery. People who score high in blue, they listen first. They're generally not the one to speak up first in a conversation. When you walk up and you meet them for the first time, they're going to let you start the conversation. They're going to let you introduce yourself. They're much more observing and a little pensive. We might view it as nervousness, but they're just waiting to see what your approach is going to be. Whereas the opposite of that, your yellows, lots of inflection in the conversation, ups and downs. I get really quiet and we can cry together. Now we're going to get really loud and we're going to laugh together. We're just going to have a blast. They advocate first and they tell stories. Here's what I think. Here's why. This is why we should do this. And I've got this 45-minute long story really quick to tell you about why this works. They will change halfway through. People who score high in yellow process outside of their head. So in the middle of their own sentence, they'll interrupt themselves and jump into a new sentence. And it can be really hard to follow them while they're processing out loud. So their linguistic style, very open, very inflective, where your blues tend to be a little more calm and a little more steady. We move down to the green end of the spectrum, much more soft and diplomatic in their approach. They're going to want everybody in the room to have a moment to be heard, to be seen. Their questions are going to be gentle questions. They may question you, but they don't want it to come across as an affront or a challenge. So they're going to question you in a way that says, I need more of that information. They speak more slowly than most because they don't want to accidentally say something that might offend somebody else or hurt their feelings. And if we happen to jump into some sort of conflict, they might shut down. They can be more of a conciliatory tone there because they don't want to have to pick sides. We move to the opposite end of the spectrum there for your reds. Very quick business pace. Let's get things done. I have 99 things on my list. I want to get 110 done today. I want to leave here feeling accomplished. They reply very quickly and may cut you off and finish your sentence for you. If you're one of those slower speakers, come on, keep it going. And they're very candid. Here's what I think. It's glad you're here. I'm going to introduce myself first. I'm going to shake your hand. And I'm going to get right to the point. And so they can come across almost as a little bit cold, but it's just because they believe in business first. I want to remind you, none of these are right or wrong. It's just about knowing how your brain functions, how other people's brains function, and how to bridge the gap. So we're not stereotyping people with this, but we're using this to think about the qualities that we need to bring into the conversation to build that rapport. We move on to body language. People who score high on the blue end of the spectrum avoid touch. They don't necessarily like to be touched, and that's okay. They tend to control their emotions and their face. They give away very little. They got a good poker face, and it can be really hard to read them. Sometimes the other colors can view this as they're not engaged or they don't care. When in reality, inside their head, they're going through everything that you've just said. They're just not going to show you the plethora of their emotions right away. They can appear detached, or if we know what's really going on, we can see them as calm and collected. But these are the people, when you walk up, COVID for them, great. I don't have to shake anybody's hand. They were super happy about that, right? Whereas you move to the opposite end of the spectrum and you get to those yellows like me, where they're hot on their sleeve. Whatever's going on in my head, you can see it on my face. You can see it in my body. I'm going to let you know. If I'm really happy to see you, you're going to know it. If I got something else going on and I'm distracted, you're going to know it. They're very animated. Like we said earlier, they talk with their whole body, laughing, joking, singing songs, being the life of the party. They enjoy being tactile. It may not be a hug, but maybe a fist bump or a high five. They might get in your business with some proximity because it's all a part of the interaction for them. And they're always going to be very energetic and lively. These are the people that seem to be the center of attention in the room, and they thrive on that. So opposite ends of the spectrum here, and how we can compare these as we're learning how to speed read. If I notice that somebody walks into the room and everybody all of a sudden is paying attention to them and they're waving and they're getting loud and they're drawing attention to themselves, wow, they're yellow. But if somebody walks into the room and they're comfortable with disappearing into the crowd, then that lets me know, okay, right now their blue is tuned up. Then we move into the green for body language, soft eye contact. Gentle gestures, nod to show interest. They'll let you continue the conversation. They'll take the conversation where you want to go. They like to smile and make people feel very comfortable. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum for the reds, very direct eye contact. I'm going to stare into your soul and let you know I don't believe a word of what you're saying. Or, hey, I absolutely agree, we're on the right page. Very assertive body posture. They don't mind standing up and maybe standing over you. Very business-like approach when it comes to their body shape, to their body language, their handshake. Let's get right down to business. Firm handshake, get to the point, move quickly. So if somebody walks in and they're shaking my hand immediately and say, all right, well, we're here today and we're here to talk about this. I know, okay, that's probably their red tuned up right now. Then we move into their communication style, speed reading and communication style here. And what you start to see about people for communication, people who score high in blue, very measured. Measured in Lumina's terms means very careful with their words. They're not just going to be very open with how they feel immediately. They're going to want to take the time to process. And then 2 or 3 days, they can be very open with you about how you feel. But in the moment, they're much more careful with that. They like information in writing. Give me the time to read, to process, to think, to do my own research, and very attentive to detail. Here's something that nobody else seems to have brought up yet. This might really, really matter. Contained is going to be how they're working through and they're processing information. They process internally. So it may not look like they want to be there. It may not look like they're engaged or they care about the conversation, when in reality, there's a whole lot going in their head, and they're usually a lot more thoughtful about things than the other color sitting in the room. We just can't tell it because they don't show it. Whereas your yellows are on the opposite end of the spectrum. We're there. We want to be there. We're excited. We're animated, but we don't have a clue what's on the agenda. We're just here for the party. And it looks like we're there and we're engaged, but we have a tendency on the yellow end of the spectrum to maybe derail the conversation because we need those stories. Information needs to be delivered verbally. Tell me the story of what's happening. Let me ask questions. Let me connect it to my own life. And it's got to flow fast and furious. You can see the way that I'm talking right now. Lots of information, get it out, because yellows process out loud. Opposite ends of the spectrum. When I'm talking to somebody, are they sitting and listening and going through the agenda? That's their blue tuned up. When I'm talking to somebody, are they making eye contact? Are they interrupting me? Are they asking questions to tell their own story? That's their yellow tuned up. Move into the green end of the spectrum, very collaborative and friendly. They want everybody to be involved. They find security in that sense of team. They're free-flowing and open. They don't mind telling you how they feel. They'll tell you their good feelings and their bad feelings, because feelings is how they process. They want to be engaged as much as possible, but they're very empathetic about that. It's like, okay, I'm engaged as long as you don't accidentally hurt somebody else's feelings. And if you say something that's a little too abrupt and I can see that somebody else's feelings in the room are hurt, now I'm worried, concerned about them, and I've lost my engagement in the conversation because I'm focused on how people are feeling. Whereas the communication for the red, to the point and time efficient. We're going to speak quick. We're going to speak the truth. Sometimes the truth hurts, but facts don't care about your feelings. We're not here to hurt feelings, but we got to get things done. Focus on the task ahead of relationship issues. Business first. Like, I really like you, but right now is not the time for me to be nice. I've got to give you some hard feedback. And that is their way of caring. They show care by being honest with you, even if it's brutally honest. That's how they show their care. So if I sit down and I'm having a meeting with somebody and they look at my sheet and they say, oh, I don't like any of this. Wow, they just tuned up their red. Now I know the approach. And then finally, we have their workspace. For the blues, a place for everything and everything in its place. We already said, Lumina says people who score high in blue are the most organized. And usually, if there's something close at hand, they're going to be able to reach out and grab the policy, the rule book, and show you right there. Very structured and tidy. Information is neatly filed away. These are the ones who are like, hey, what was that policy that we talked about 2 weeks ago? Oh, I have that saved on my desktop. I'll email it to you right now. They have that information because that information is security for them. They're more formal with a more traditional air in the workplace. Whereas your yellows, everything's all over the place. Nobody else can find anything on my desk, but I know where everything is. Chaotic yet exciting. They claim to know where everything is. Now, that claim is a little prick in my heart. I usually do know where everything is, even if it's a mess. But that's how we process. Lots of projects going on at one time, lots of conversations happening at one time is okay with those yellows. So if you walk up and somebody's desk is really messy, that's a sign of some yellow energy. Whereas your greens, their workspace is going to feel lived in and informal. Pictures of family and friends, pictures of their kids, coloring sheets their kids gave them, pillows and blankets sitting around, a bowl of candy at their desk because they're always going to offer you something. Greens love to fatten other people up. They want to feed everyone. That kind of grandma nature kicks in. And so their desk will feel like an extension of their home. Whereas your reds, very functional. And some people would view a red's office as a little bit cold. If there are things on display, it's going to be all the reasons why you should listen to them. Here's all of my diplomas. Here's all of my awards. This is why you're here to take advice from me. And whatever it can do to save time. They love that sort of stuff. Time-saving gadgets, because time is money for them. And then finally, as we're looking at these things, we start to see some ideas about how we can start to recognize other people. And I'm going to throw one more thing in here really quickly. People who score high in yellow, like me, they dress to show their personality. They will wear bright colors and crazy things that other people wouldn't wear in the workplace to show, because they want to stand out. People who score high in blue, on the opposite end of the spectrum, they tend to dress in a way that is professional and follows the rules, but doesn't draw attention to them. They're okay with disappearing into the background. People who score high in green, they dress for comfort. Usually somebody that scores high green, they got a cardigan at their desk. They're wearing their comfortable shoes. They're not here to impress anybody. I see you, Robbie. So that's what they dress for comfort. Whereas your reds, the opposite end of the spectrum, they dress to impress. When they walk in, even if they're not the boss, they want you to think they're the boss. And they're going to dress in a way that shows that they're professional and they're in charge. So we can use these things to help us identify. There's a really easy dichotomy that I throw out there. When we're looking at this spectrum you see here with blue and yellow on top, green and yellow on top, red and blue on bottom. If they want to talk about personal interest, they're green or yellow. If they want to talk about business first, they're blue or red. Then we look at the side-by-side dichotomy, yellow, red, green, blue. If they let you talk first, they're green or blue, introversion. If they want to talk first, they're yellow or red, extroversion. So yellow will talk first and will talk personal interest. Red will talk first, but business first. Blue will let you talk first, but they want to talk about business first. Green will let you talk first, but they're willing to talk about personal interest. So let's take some time here to identify what might motivate your community partners. How do you get them involved in the conversation? This is going to be some time for another breakout with for you and in your teams. What motivates your partner? What conversations do you need to build in order to continue this idea of speed reading, of building rapport with your community partners? What would be an important conversation you need to have? Maybe there's somebody that you're trying to build a relationship with, like we said earlier, and the vibe's just not there, and for some reason you're struggling with that. Based on speed reading, where do they fall on the spectrum, and how can you adjust your approach in order to build that relationship? What questions do you need to build to meet with them in their personality type?
All right. Before we move into breakout rooms, let's first see if you have any questions of clarity, both about the content or what the assignment is when you go into your breakout room. Any questions of clarity right now? Perhaps something Shade was talking about sparked a thought, a curiosity. Pretty spot on. Good tips and hints. This PDF I shared earlier also has all of that information on one pager for you. So go back to that if you need to. I hope you download and save it and print it and post it in your cubicle or wherever you are on your desktop. So it's a good reminder to have handy for you. We're going to go back into the same groups. Nikki, Grayson, Tara is in one room. Leah, Tabitha, Helenia is another room. But each team will get its own document now. So I'm going to put you in breakout rooms first. I will walk into your room and share with you your new document. It is another Google Doc. So I know Tabitha was having a hard time getting into Google Doc. So at this moment, you might want to share if somebody is struggling in your team, share a screen so you can all see what you're working on. But you have two assignments. One is to complete now, and that is to look at your community partners and identify, given all these tips that you just received, which color, energy, or archetype do you think they lead with or they bring into the workspace with you? So you will have to put some names there for that. And then second part of it is what kinds of questions would they respond well to? Because this will lead you to then be prepared to have a conversation with them and engage with them through the question asking, so to speak, to address some of those preferences that they have. So let's go into your breakout rooms and I'll drop the links once you're there. You will have 20 minutes in your breakout room to work on this question. So thank you. Shade, I'm going to share a screen with each team and let's take a look at who you were thinking about. And if we can have the team just give us a quick insight into individuals' traits. How were you able to identify what put a certain person in one box versus another? And what are some insights about what motivates them emerged for you? So we're going to go with group one first. And let me share screen so everybody can see it. Can we have one of you and then the rest of you can help and support and chime in. So it's a group report. So Nikki, Grace, and Tara, what helped you? How did you go about sorting this through? And tell us a little bit more about one person being in multiple categories.
With my individual in particular, I just went off of my interactions with them because I've been able to interact with him outside of the one community meeting that we've had. Been several coalition meetings and phone calls, and just what struck me most about him in those interactions, he was a very a very empowering and inspiring person. Anytime he was leading coalition meetings, that's how his persona came off. He's very very fired up about what he does, which is veterans, their health and their well-being mentally, suicide prevention, things of that nature. And so that's what really came through for him. So it was really easy to put him into the empower and inspiring categories.
Mm-hmm. All right, great.
In regards to, I just want to speak on the our community pastor, who is actually in all 4 categories, and he fit into all 4 categories because he is to me, he's just a natural born leader. He's been in the school system for like years. He's also a pastor. His father was a pastor, and I think his dad's dad was a pastor. He has cousins that are pastors, and his, I want to say, nephew is also a pastor. So they've always been involved in the community from multiple aspects. His sister is a principal. And so like they're just a family that, and him in particular, if they recognize a problem, they're gonna create a solution, and then they're gonna actually follow through with all of those plans. So they're natural on wanting the best for individuals as well as our community or the population they serve. They inspire because he leads by example. They're commanding because he's just followed through with goals. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So that's why I chose him.
Mm-hmm.
I am complete.
Okay, thank you. Tara, we haven't heard from you yet. If you could share a little bit about what you were thinking.
Okay, when I chose mine, like the state representative Tommy, he has been in our community for as long as I can remember. He's always involved in everything. I don't work with him on a professional and personal level. So that's how I kind of choose the empowering and the conscientious blue, because he will work with you and help you with any problem you have. You can go to him, his door is always open. And he always want to see the best for the community. So that's how I choose him to go in those categories.
Mhm. Great. You guys have chosen individuals that exhibit multiple, if not all, archetypes. Harder to pinpoint one in particular that is strongest for one of those of the 4. So I'm curious, Shade, your perspective on when you're working with groups or individuals who are so well-rounded, and there are some people who are almost equal across the board. There isn't one higher than the other. So the speed reading is really about recognizing what we have to bring to the table, but also our next activity is crafting a conversation that taps into those different parts of our brain, right? It's not just
Right.
different people coming in, but also as an individual, helping us to engage these different perspectives within ourselves, but also learn how to expand and make room for those of us who don't have strong preference in one area or the other to really grow that muscle.
Yes, ma'am. And one of the things that we mentioned in this group too, as I joined their breakout room, when you are working with leaders who have been very effective for a long time, it's usually because they figured out how to tune up all 4 of these dominant traits. They've learned how to be successful in building relationships with lots of people in lots of different situations. And so the most difficult people I've ever had to try to identify as far as their primary, secondary color are those leaders who are really effective because they're good at all 4. And not just because she's here in the room, but I remember having a conversation the first time that my coworker and I met Dr. Irina, and the whole way home from Dallas to Oklahoma for 2 hours, we were trying to figure out what her color was because we could see all 4 of these show up. And it can be a testament to your ability to grow. Like Dr. Irina said, we should be trying to develop our ability to tune up all 4 colors to be effective in any case. My response and how to approach that is give them all 4. If you're working with somebody who's good at all 4, The most important thing for the greens is helping people. So show up and explain how your idea, your project can help people. The most important thing for the yellow end of the spectrum is solving problems and prepping for the future. Your idea that helps people should also solve problems and prep for the future. For the reds, the most important thing is getting as much done as possible, as soon as possible. Your good idea should help get more done. The most important thing for the blue is the evidence to support that, the data to show that your idea works. A great idea should have that. So your really important projects will already hit on all four. So go ahead and give them all four. And when I show up to an important meeting, I have all four ready. If I realize that Dr. Irina's primary is super high green, then I'm going to spend a whole lot more time talking about the people aspect to tune that in for her. But if it's hard to tell, I'm going to go ahead and hit on all four.
Mm-hmm.
So
and in our conversation model, you will see you have room for all four, right? So it's
Right.
just a matter of finding the right question and knowing how much time to spend at each of those
Right.
levels, given who is in your group. So let's take a look at group 2. Thanks, Shay. Can we share from this team, Leah, Tabitha, Helania, what was your, who are the people you were thinking about, and kind of help us continue to understand the characteristics that popping up for each category?
So we did ours a little different. We thought of a person from our Community Connect event as we're going into the spring action planning session that would fit each one of those categories is kind of what we did. So like, with mine I had Benny Cook. He's a state representative. And so he's very, he's in the green, he's empowering, he's very data driven, has to have the proof, that kind of thing. So he does a lot, just to serve and assist other people, but he has to have that information. Erica Wiseman, she is a shelter insurance, and she's very involved in the community, asserts her ideas, leads by example, is just that kind of person that really falls in that category. And then Paul Richardson, he is a pastor, and it's kind of interesting that I would, but have goals there, but when he was our Community Connect event, he was the first one to get up and, really, like, when we were identifying different things, and very goal driven to make for the community, to make sure things happen and get done. And then Maggie Moore, she is a high school counselor, and also does the district for homeless. So she has realistic results. Obviously, she wants to be proactive just to make sure, because she cares about others, to make sure that those things happen. And so that's just kind of what I had with, or my thought process there.
Oh, nice. Thank you. Let's hear from Tabitha and Helania.
Okay. These are the community partners that I have worked closely with. I can list several, but these are the ones that have really stuck out. Like Jesse Tyler, he worked for Mississippi Department of Human Services, and he's a very trustworthy individual. Whatever he said he would do, he's gonna do it. He have the compassion for the communities with the people, making sure that information is related out into the community, and that they are receiving the information and utilizing it. Also with Tawanda Her, she's with the Our Mom. She's a big one thing, she's believe in teamwork, bringing everyone in. Her personality just shines with everyone. She's not a very opinionated person. She listens to everyone's opinion, and you just love her attitude. Just keep the room just bright. Kara Mack, very headstrong. Her way is her way. So it's pretty much, you have to use some of your conversation matters expertise with her. So just very strong headed with different things. But at the end, she loved the end result. It's all the way about progress. She don't believe in you wasting her time. You have to come in with your A game with her. And it's pretty much, she pretty much keeps you on your feet. she worked with Delta Health Partners, as well as Desiree Norwood. She's a director for Plan A. She can fit in the blue and the red, but when she attend some of the events, she show more her blue, which is very appreciative. And she believe in making sure that everything is carried out and in a timely manner, and she believe in success for all the common purpose.
Awesome. Thank you, Tabitha. Helenia.
Nope, it's me. She already went.
Okay. Yeah.
Mine all work with First National Bank, which is a financial institute here in Atmore. So basically, they're all driven by the same things. Shay Gilchrist is going to want the facts, what the project is, what's going to cost, and give her numbers. Sandra Gray is going to do on timelines. You've got a goal set, so she wants everything to be going in that direction. Wanda is big on partners. She knows everybody in town, has been here her whole life. So she's going to want to bring in the people who are going to make it successful. And then Sherry, and I cannot remember her last name, is a bottom line. She wants to know the balances and if it's going to work and how long it's going to take to get there. And I'm complete.
Thank you. And so when you think of these individuals and you start putting faces and recognizing behaviors and what you're observing in terms of their environment, body language, even dress and the language that they use, can start forming in your mind these practices that you can implement to make sure you're engaging them effectively. So when I see facts language, right, it doesn't mean that only people who have a lot of blue energy within themselves or associated with conscientious blue archetype. All of us need to know data at some point. All of us need to start from that space. So encouraging conversation or a meeting or whatever you start with this group of people or an individual, one-on-one or group, start with sharing the facts or acknowledging the facts or reviewing the facts. So that's what this conversation framework helps you do. Then move into the green space, so to speak, reflecting on relationships, encouraging relationship building, making time for people sharing hopes, appreciations, and concerns. And then you move into your interpretive space, idea generation, problem solving. Finally, end with some decisions, next steps, resolutions. So that's how you include each person, but also how you build each person to be more aware and more skilled in thinking in these different ways. So on that note, I'm going to pass it on to Robbie to share a little bit about the homework. What are we doing with these conversations next?
Yeah, so with this homework, what we'd like you to do is develop a conversation as a group. So with your other team members, so the 3 groups that you've been in today, develop that conversation and then individually facilitate those with your person, whoever it is that you chose. And then what we'd like you to do with that is come to the mandatory Q&A follow-up that is not currently on your calendars, but will be shortly. Becca's going to send that out. And we're just going to share any feedback and your final facilitated questions. Yeah, that's the homework. And then we also want you to send in your A game, B game handout as well.
Just say that again.
The whole thing?
The homework part.
Yep. So homework is to work together in your groups that you were in. So the 3 people that you've been working with throughout the day, and then to develop a conversation, and then take that conversation back to your person individually to hold that conversation. And then when you come to the mandatory Q&A next week, then you will tell us, some feedback, how the conversation went, and what your final questions were. Does that make sense?
I'm being nice. It's 2025. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so Leah and Tabitha and Helania, you guys already have a good start. And it sounds like your conversation can be applied to any of those partners because you're inviting them all to your spring action planning session. So go ahead and continue on that same topic and say, okay, because for Robbie, it doesn't matter how big, how important it is. It's just to practice, right? It's an opportunity to apply what you're learning here.
Yep.
So when you're drafting your questions, make sure to go back to those comments about what motivates each person and include those comments. An example would be, you know, for objective level, tell them more in the closing, in the opening, what it is about that you're inviting them to, what this event is about, when it's happening, all the logistics, for sure, address that first. But then you might want to ask some questions too, not just tell facts and information, right? You might ask them, you know, what do they see, you know, what do they see in terms of their role in this event? Anything that might help them articulate what information is important for them to put on the table, or things that they need to know before they show up for this event. It could be as simple as, what do you need to know, right? What are some things that would be helpful to you to understand before you show up? That's a data level question. And then think about the questions you would ask at each of those levels. So that's the homework. For us, for closing, I'd like to have a conversation in the end. Here we have 5-6 minutes to close the session, and then the poll. Robbie, you'll launch afterwards. So what's one thing that stood out to you from these 3 hours? I'm gonna start this time. I'm gonna call 3 people at a time, which is called stacking method. I'll go with Tara, and then Leah, and then Nikki. What stood out to you from the last 3 hours? Tara, Leah, and
Yeah, what stood out for me in the last hour? Hmm. I guess being able to group each individual into a category, like the red, the green, the yellow, knowing their personality and which group to put them in.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Tara. Leah, Nikki, and then Tabitha.
Seeing that most people can fit under multiple categories. So it's a little bit more difficult to try to pinpoint which direction that you need to go with them.
Great. Nikki, Tabitha, and Grayson. Hey, Nikki, are you here?
I am here. I do apologize. I had someone walked in my office, so I missed out. What am I supposed to be doing? I'm
What
sorry.
stood out to you from our time, from the 3 hours we've spent together this morning?
Was my takeout?
Or one
Takeaway?
thing, yeah, could be a takeaway or something that
Gotcha.
is still on your mind.
The takeaway is that you can really fit into every category. That's the first thing. The second thing is, it's whatever you're strong at, it's okay to also try to learn from others who are in those other categories. And that's going to encourage you to, I guess, improve in those areas, which will make you become a more effective leader.
Great. Thank you, Nikki. Tabitha?
My pleasure.
Grayson, and then Helania.
Looking at the community partners that we work with, one thing that's would motivate us from working with them. So I think that is a big look at. Take.
Motivations. Awesome. Thank you. Grayson, Helania, and then Erica.
Just the importance of being able to regulate what traits come forth more strongly in different situations. I think that's what's one of the most important traits in a well-rounded individual, especially somebody in leadership, just being able to kind of speak to the situation and to the individual and kind of meet them where they're at versus, you know, just always being stuck in one particular zone, so to speak.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Helania, Erica, and then Robbie.
I think, I mean, obviously the speed reading, I never really thought about, you know, reading other people and then, you know, using these tools to be able to communicate and interact with them. So I think that's good. And then, kind of like what Nikki said with just or even like Shade said with you, like they had a hard time determining which one you were because you were so much in all the categories. So I think it would be cool to be able to try to, just because you show up there now, that you can actually move to be in those other, categories as well, to where you're more even, I guess. So you're not just all people focused, and that maybe you are more, like evenly out, on the opposite ends of the spectrum. So versus just who you are is who you are, that you can actually become somebody different, adjust, I guess. So.
Awesome. Thank you, Erica. Robbie.
For me, it would be just understanding that your character traits may show up while working with other people on a consistent basis, but knowing that just because those are your traits doesn't mean that they're other people's traits. And so learning how to shift when necessary.
Great. Thank you, Robbie.
After having gone through this now a handful of times, realizing that, yeah, I really haven't changed a whole lot. Blue-green is still very much who I am to my core.
Awesome. Thank you. Well, in the interest of time, we don't have a lot of time to continue with the conversation. So you shared both what stood out to you and some takeaways. I just want to also acknowledge the fact that as we continue to grow and learn and develop, be patient and give grace to other people, because they don't know what you know, right? And once you know, you can't unknow it. So it's like there's this sense of responsibility to use this knowledge wisely and carefully and help build other people up to be productive in our groups, in our conversations. Because the bottom line, and here's my red showing up, Shade, we need to get stuff done. So we need to move the needle. We need to make change happen. And the key is to bring everybody along to make that happen. So that's the importance of it. So go ahead, Robbie, and launch your poll for us, if you could. Give you a second to
Alrighty.
respond.
So you should see 3 questions now.
We should have music. Da, 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 da. That's my yellow showing up.
It reminds me of the Jeopardy game that we played
Yeah,
at
right.
camp.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you want me to awkwardly sing in the background? Because I'm willing.
Yeah.
So now there's your yellow.
I've got the Bluey song memorized.
All right. So we have 4 out of 6, looks like. 6 out of 6. Everybody had a chance to vote. There's some still room for growth for all of us. So if you're the neutral vote, guess what? Practice, practice, practice. That's the way to learn going forward. And you know where to find your cohort. This is your laboratory of people. Hopefully you feel safe with to keep asking stupid questions and to learn from asking and learning about how communicate better and what motivates people, so that you can gain those skills as you continue to do your great work. So thank you very much. And what are some next steps, Robbie?
Next steps, 1 second. While I get this
So
pulled
while
up.
she's looking at the next steps, I just want to verify on that homework. It's not a generic kind of homework, like you're wanting us to pick one person, basically, that we have to go out and have a conversation with.
Yep.
Right. I mean, it's not like just the generic of those action planning session that we had started. It's more of a individual.
Yep. So it's one person that we want you to have a conversation with.
Okay.
All right. Can everyone see my screen okay? Awesome. So some key dates and events coming up. January 9th, so Thursday, we have the mandatory priority action planning facilitation review. The 16th, we have the mandatory Q&A for following up on today's learning, as well as your homework is due, and then your A game, B game handout. February 27th, we have another mandatory Q&A for batch logistics calls for those coming up in the spring. On March 18th, we have the Facilitation Development Bootcamp Session 1. March 20th is Session 2, and then April 1st and 3rd are Sessions 3 and 4. So a bit of learning coming up in the next few months, along with your priority action plan workshops and implementation and all sorts of fun stuff happening. Kind of a busy spring coming up. I am putting into the chat a link to our usual How Did We Do survey. We want to know your opinion and overall experience and how you feel that this training went. And then if you have any questions, comments, concerns, here is all of our contact info. I know you all know how to get a hold of us now, but we just want to make sure everyone has our emails, phone numbers, everything else. And I will also be sending a follow-up email with all of this information from today. And I do also want to say thank you for your time. Erica,
Wonderful.
anything from your side?
I don't have it.
Awesome.
All right.
Can I take a group shot photo real quick? Look and smile. 1, 2. A little bit higher or higher up. Tara, there we go. That's again my yellow pictures. Take care, you
Awesome.
guys.